Hi everybody, this is Kate Haley with Glazer's Camera. Thank you for your patience while we've been working out some kinks to get our live stream to go live. Had a little network issue here, but I think we are good to go for right now. So with that said, I don't want to delay anymore. I'd love to introduce you to Matthew Sutherland. He is a Lumix ambassador, and he's going to lead a presentation today on video workflow for editing and corporate filmmakers. If you have questions during this segment, please feel free to post those in the chat. I'm going to be in there, as well as Mark Toll from Panasonic, who's hanging out with us this weekend. So if you have questions, post those there. Between Mark and Matthew, myself, and also Peter from Panasonic Lumix, we're going to get those questions answered. With that said, Matthew, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you so we can get started. Tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into your presentation.
Excellent. Yeah, my name is Matthew Sutherland. I'm a Panasonic Lumix ambassador, and I own a company called Matrimony Films. We do wedding films, and then I have a corporate brand called Tiva Cinematics. And Panasonic just recently hired me to do film for their GH5 Mark II. They wanted me to make a film that shows off all the new improvements on the camera. So we took it up to the mountains, down to the surf, and snowboarded and surfed with that camera and put it to the test. So I'm so excited to talk to you guys about how I shot that film and our encoding process in order to get the highest quality version up online for you guys. So we should probably just dive right in, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
let's do it. Let's dive right in.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And this is basically, we'll start off with, so we're going to talk about video workflow for wedding and corporate filmmaking. I want to have a shout out as well to my other sponsor, Light and Motion, which they are fantastic as far as lighting. They help me a ton. But let's talk about how we get started. So if you change the way you look at things you're going to look at will change. And that is always true. Every project I ever get into, it's all about how I look at it. And as soon as I change my perspective, that's where you can kind of like throw out some new creative ideas just by looking at something differently. So let's talk about this presentation. We're going to talk about frame rate. We're going to talk about choosing resolution, choosing color profile, and then importing, editing with proxies possibly, and then how to get the best quality export possible, and then the best encode for our final film to get it up online. So when we want to have a successful project, we usually, I clicked on the zoom, we shoot, we edit, we export, and then we upload, right? Those are usually good, but we have to add one more thing because lots of times I'll just, I get a project and you want to get started, you grab your camera, you get out there and you shoot it. And then you think about editing down like afterwards. And then sometimes you think about exporting after you've edited. What do I do? How do I export it the best? And then ultimately after you export, oftentimes we think, okay, now how do we upload it to get the best? Well, if we start from the back and we work backwards and we plan, so if we put planning in front of all of that, your end result is going to be 1,000 times better every single time. So if you approach it all from the prospect of uploading, like ultimately, how do I get the best possible resolution online for my users? That's going to tell you how you should upload it, which is going to say how you should export it, which is going to tell you how you should edit it, and then it's going to ultimately give you all what you need to do in order to shoot it. And so often we work backwards, we work the wrong way. We need to work backwards. So what I do when I start a shoot now, especially like, this film for Panasonic, I had a brand new camera with new color profiles, new resolutions. So it forced me to basically figure out, okay, what frame rate am I going to shoot in? And Panasonic came to me with a color profile they wanted me to shoot in because they wanted to show it off. It was brand new. That's great. So what frame rate? And they wanted a cinematic film. So I knew I was going to shoot it 24 frames. But that leads me to, what's the purpose of the film? What's the tone? What's the mood? And what's the client's intention? So oftentimes in a wedding, my client does not care. They want a video just like the ones they see on my website. Okay, well, then it becomes completely up to me as far as my frame rate and all the rest. But sometimes a client wants something that shows off details of their products. So you're going to have to shoot in a frame rate that's a lot higher frame rate because you want to show more detail. So the big questions are, am I looking for a film that looks cinematic, or am I looking for something that's going to wow my client with lifelike detail? Am I going to shoot it all? Am I going to be adjusting my frame rates? Lots of times when you shoot on a drone, you might want to shoot in a different frame rate than when you're shooting on your main camera. I try to shoot in the same frame rate all along, which ultimately is going to allow me to edit on a timeline that's all in the same frame rate, which ultimately is going to allow me to export something that is going to look the nicest right away. When you mix frame rates or you mix things, that's where you get problems at times where you see somebody's film that maybe has a drone shot that's pixelated, or pieces of their film that didn't encode the right way. Why did that happen? Well, lots of times you can go all the way back to they mixed frame rates. Now, if you're smart about it and you're intentional about it, you can mix frame rates. You just have to understand how to make that work ultimately, right? So I do shoot weddings all the time where I shoot all my weddings in 24 frames. There's no right or wrong answer to how you want to shoot with what frame rate. They're all different and great in different ways for different reasons. So I shoot in a 24 frame rate for my wedding films. So for a cinematic film, I'm going to shoot in 24 frames. That's going to give us the most cinematic look possible. But if I want to shoot something that's super lifelike, and maybe my client is a corporate client that wants to really show off detail, I'm going to shoot in 60 frames. So then I'm going to want to find a 4K 60 frame rate. And then in my slow-mo, maybe I want shots that I'm going to want to speed ramp. If you want to speed ramp, you might want to shoot in 120 frames on your variable frame rate. When I do weddings, I'm not going to do a lot of speed ramping. I want to show my clients in camera some of the slow motion shots that I've gotten so that I can kind of wow them along the way and make them really kind of big fans before I even send them a finished edit. Because then they're expecting something great. They already are excited about it. It's really fun. So I shoot all my weddings 24 frames and then 60 frames, 4K 60 variable frame rate, which equates to like a 40% speed. But if I'm going to do a product shot, I might do it in 120 frames because I might want to speed it up really fast and then slow it down, which we call speed ramping. That really works the best if you use 120 frames. Okay, so enough about that. I need to move my zoom around. So let's go right over to resolution. So when we're choosing our resolution, a lot of people will be like, you know, why would I ever shoot 1080? I have this amazing camera that shoots in 6K. Why would I shoot 1080? Well, obviously, you know, so your choices are really 1080, 4K, Cinema 4K, or 5.7K and up, right? What I love about this new GH5 Mark II is it has all of these possibilities. And I shot this film, which this is a still from the film. You see my girl, Allison, who was the star of our film. She's fantastic. We shot this in Cinema 4K. Panasonic wanted a cinematic film that was 24 frames, shot in Cine-like D2 profile, which is this new profile on the GH5 Mark II that looks awesome right out of camera. And you can shoot something cinematic, put it in your edit bay, make some edits, put some music to it, and put it online super fast without having to worry about color grading, vlog, putting LUTs on it, anything like that, right? Okay, so when they asked me that, I said, okay, can I shoot in Cinema 4K, which is actually larger than most cameras' 4K profile. So I'm getting a larger resolution and it's more widescreen. So it basically adds, it uses the full sensor and it makes it a little more widescreen to start with. And then ultimately for my film, I did a 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio so that it really looked like a film you'd see in the movie theaters. You might only need 1080p. I mean, if you want to do 120 frames, most cameras will do 1080 in 120 frames, and that's going to allow you to speed ramp stuff. And if you're shooting 1080 60p and you want to put it on YouTube, it's going to look great online 1080 60 frames. So that's not a bad way to go if you're going to go to 120 frames for speed ramping. The reason you'd shoot a higher resolution is if you're going to want to manipulate it in post. You can punch into different shots, you can reframe things to make it look like you framed it originally, and you don't notice any loss in resolution. So, and now also remember, the higher the resolution, the larger your files, the more cumbersome it's going to be to edit, to encode, and all that stuff. So make a choice wisely. If you have questions about things, again, you can put it in the chat. You can always send a little message to me on Instagram at Matrimony Films, and I can answer questions for you if you have specific questions about resolution. Okay, so color profile. I always shoot our wedding films in natural color profile. On the Panasonic cameras, the GH5, the S series, and now this GH5 Mark II, the natural profile looks phenomenal right out of camera. When I have a volume wedding film brand. We do 100 wedding films a year. I don't want to color grade 100 wedding films. It takes too long and there's not enough profit in that. So I shoot it in natural profile. Then I know right out of camera, I'm going to get a really good image with a really nice color. And then I can color match. I can tweak colors based on, like maybe we missed in the white balance on one shot. But I know for the most part, all of my stuff's going to look really good. What I love about this GH5 Mark II is it has this Cinelike D2 profile, which I was very skeptical when I made this film that I had to stick to this color profile. I was a little upset about it. I wanted to shoot in Vlog. I wanted to be a filmmaker and I wanted to put LUTs on it and make this unique color that no one had ever seen before, but they wanted me to shoot in this Cinelike D2 profile. And the whole point is to prove, as I said, that you can make a film, put it online right out of camera and it looks great. And now that I've done it, I've gone through that whole process, I think I'm going to switch over to Cinelike D2 when I use the GH5 Mark II on weddings. It's that nice. It looks so good coming out of camera. It looks really cinematic. And literally what you see in my film called California Double on Lumix's YouTube channel, it is right out of camera. We did color matching at times when we, wanted to tweak to make sure the colors matched from shot to shot in different light, but we did no color grading, no LUTs in any way. When I shoot a corporate film or I shoot something that I really want to, and I shouldn't say corporate film, when I shoot a film where I want a very unique look, I will shoot in Vlog. Vlog is going to give you a lot of dynamic range, which is great, but you do have to be able to have it in your budget in order to do color grading. Color grading takes a long time if you're doing it right. Yeah, you can shoot in Vlog and you can slap a LUT on there, but I guarantee you most seasoned filmmakers can tell you just shot in Vlog and you threw a LUT on there. When you shoot in Vlog, you really should color grade the film, and that should be a serious process, very, very intentional step. You're not trying to make your film look like that LUT. You're trying to make your film look unique to you. That's why you shoot in Vlog and put a LUT with your variations on it. Maybe it's a couple different LUTs. When we watch great films like Christopher Nolan films, those have his color feel to it. His color matches the mood of the film. When you watch great filmmakers, whoever that is for you, I guarantee you they spent a long time figuring out what look they wanted, and then also a long time and probably a lot of money dialing in that LUT to make it look perfect and unique to them. So what's your budget? Are you wanting to streamline in post-production? I would say throw it in Cinelike D2 if you want something cinematic, or throw it in natural if you're gonna do something that's more like if you're shooting in 60 frames, whether that's 4K 60 or 1080 60, use a natural color profile and you're gonna save yourself in post-production like you wouldn't believe. And like I said, if you want some kind of killer LUT that makes your film look very unique, then you're gonna shoot in Vlog, okay? All right, importing, exporting, let's get right to it. When you import all your footage, you might wanna make proxy files when you're importing right away. That's gonna save you a lot of time if you're shooting, especially like, again, on this film, there I am shooting with the GH5 Mark II. We had to shoot, we had very specific parameters that Panasonic wanted us to follow. I shot in Cinema 4K, all I, 10-bit, 422 color, right? So it was 24 frames, Cinema 4K, 422, all I. So those are huge files. Every frame of that film is 400 megabits per second. Everything is super high resolution. So I ended up filling up 3 terabyte drives just with all the footage that we had, and once we started editing and all that. So making proxies is a huge step, and you do it right away, right in your NLE, you editing software. You basically make proxies right away. That's going to save you. Then you can also work with editors that are in different places, and you guys can all share the proxy footage, the proxy files. And it makes it really easy to edit. All right, so when I'm done editing a film and I want to export for my clients, I will do a draft export until the film, and I'll make sure my client understands we're not going to export in full resolution until the end. It just takes too long, and you're most likely, especially if you have a client. Wedding films, different story. I probably still do a draft with them just to make sure, because if anybody has changes, you don't want to spend hours and hours exporting and encoding and uploading, because it's not just an export. You have to remember, you're exporting, then you're encoding, and then you're uploading. It's 3 steps. Every single time you need to make a good quality draft for a professional client. So I do a draft export, which just means I do probably like 10 megabits per second on my export. And I'll export in H.264. So I was going to bring up my NLE. I think I'll leave that based on time constraints. I'm just gonna keep this in here. If anybody has questions about that, again, Matrimony Films on Instagram, you can send me any questions you want. But yeah, I make an H.264 export right from Final Cut Pro or Premiere. And I use both. I have different editors that I work with that use both. I personally use Final Cut. I do an H.264 export, and then I send it as like a 10 megabits per second file. I upload that to Vimeo, and I love my Vimeo system. I have one editor that uses, I'm not gonna remember the name. You can ask me. If it comes back to me, I'll use it, but I'm sure you guys have heard of it. But any kind of, like Vimeo's got these great review tools. You can send a review link out to clients, and they can literally put the notes right there at every little time code and give you notes. And then once I'm ready to do a finished export, like a final, we've gotten changes, we've gone back and forth. They love it. Now let's talk about best settings for a high quality export. Okay, I'm gonna make this really simple. I just do it in the highest, I export in exactly the files I shot. So I shoot Apple ProRes 422 all I'm gonna export it Apple ProRes. So I export right out of Final Cut as my source file, because I want every piece of resolution in that finished video as I possibly can get. And then down the road, for different purposes, whether we're uploading to 4K, whether we're uploading to 1080, whether we're putting it on a flash drive for a client, storing it on a hard drive for, for basically archival purposes, I just want it the best resolution possible. So I export in the same resolution that I shot it. That's it. Don't be more complicated than that. If you need to save space and things like that, that's a whole different story, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about exporting for the best resolution possible. Shoot in Apple ProRes, I export in ProRes. All right. Like I talked about, H.264 for me, exporting is going to be more for a draft, something that I'm going to get notes on. And then ProRes is going to be for my final export. Okay, let's talk about settings for uploading. So I'm going to move my zoom. I keep having to move my zoom guy. So the best settings for encoding, I use media encoder and I also use compressor. So I use both of those. A media encoder is an Adobe product, so Adobe Media Encoder. You really want to think about when you're, okay, so I've got my finished video that I've exported from my software, my Final Cut export, and it's ProRes, Apple ProRes. It's probably like, I think I did a 4.5-minute film, and that Apple ProRes was about 14 gigs. That's how big that file was. Okay. I take it into Media Encoder, and I want to figure out what bit rate is the best. So I'm actually going to skip ahead, and I'm going to come back to this slide, because this is a bitrate chart that is going to help me. So this is something you guys are probably going to want to take a screenshot of. So I'm going to just put them all out here, and then you guys could take a screenshot from this if you want to. This is a really cool, handy bitrate chart, which means if you shot in 24 frames or 30 frames in more standard frame rate, and you shot in 4K resolution, your export should be 35 to 45 megabits per second. That's how high you want to go. We're going to talk about variable bitrate in a minute. I'll get to that, but just understanding what's my bitrate number, what should be my target bitrate. 4K, 35 to 45, 2K, 16 megabits per second, 1080, 10 megabits per second. They actually recommend 8, but I never go below 10, ever. That's just me. I think more is better when you're talking about a professional client. If you need to save space, I mean, how much is a hard drive? You know, like $50 for a 1 terabyte hard drive. Like, I would just, if it's a client, I would buy a specific hard drive specifically for that client's project. If you're not charging enough to make that make sense, then you need to charge more. That's the bottom line. So, all right, professional client, I go no lower than 10 megabits per second. If I'm doing a high frame rate, 48 frames a second, 60, 120, and these are usually when we're throwing it into slow-mo, so I'm going 4K 60 at 40% or 1080, 120, and where it is the new GH6 that is going to be coming out soon is going to have 4K 120. Stay tuned. I can't wait for that. That would be at 53 to 68 megabits per second, 2K 24 megabits per second, and then 1080 12 megabits per second. So this is a pretty handy bitrate chart. I'm going to actually have to escape here to get back to my last slide so we can kind of go over that. Here we go. All right, so if I'm in Media Encoder, we went over the bit rates. Let's talk about 1 pass versus 2 pass versus, okay, so there's 3 choices when you're encoding your project, right? You've got that finished file. You can do a CBR, which is a constant bit rate. You can do a VBR 1 pass, or you can do a VBR 2 pass, okay? The CBR is a constant bit rate. That means you tell it to go at 12 megabits per second, it's gonna do 12 megabits for the whole video, no matter what. If you're doing a 1 pass, it's gonna do a variable bit rate. You set a target bit rate for like 12, but some frames it might go to 15, and some frames it might go to 10 or 8. So when you're allowing a variable bit rate, you are actually creating a situation where the computer is going to decide how clean each frame is. So if you're in a situation where you're encoding something, you export it, you encode it, and then you see some pixelation in different moments in the video, try a CBR, constant bit rate, because that will encode everything at the exact same bit rate. Or you can try a 2 pass. So I always, when I'm sending out a finished product for a client, I'm going to do a 2 pass variable bit rate. And I'm going to set it usually at 35 megabits per second, almost no matter what. Even if I shoot at 1080 or whatever, I want that high-end, like really high quality look for my client. I don't want any problems anywhere along the line. So do yourself a favor, spend the extra time. That's why I only encode at the end of the project, 2-pass variable bit rate. What's happening with that 1-pass is it's just going through and analyzing and encoding at the same time, and it's just doing it once. Whereas a 2-pass, it's going to analyze your whole video the first time. It's going to go, oh, we know exactly where to do the high and the low. And then the second time through, it simply encodes it. So if you wanted to do a constant bit rate of like 35 or whatever, then that's fine. Or I would do a 2-pass. I would do a 1-pass when you're doing your initial draft. So you did an H.264, maybe you want to shrink the file size a little bit and you're going to encode it, maybe 10 megabits per second, variable 1-pass, that's fine if it's a draft. Okay, throw me any questions about that you have. All right, now so I use compressor for my film when I wanted to get the greatest encode possible. I set out, when I finished this film, I was like, okay, Panasonic is going to have a lot of, like there are a lot of eyes on this, a lot of guys who basically are technical. They're going to be looking at color. They're going to be looking at detail. How do I get the best encode I possibly can? And through that experience, I have learned it is through compressor and it is an H.265 encode. So when I did an H.265 encode through compressor, which is a program only you can find on Mac, and it's like a brother or sister of Final Cut Pro. It allows for an H.265 encode, and it took my 14 gigabyte file and it made it 500 megabytes. And I will show them both next to you, and you will not be able to tell the difference between the H.265 and the full resolution ProRes file. It's indistinguishable as far as, to the naked eye, basically. You could analyze the, fine print of every frame and you might be able to find something, but I cannot. So if you want to do something super high end, I would get compressor. I think it's $49 and do an H.265 encode. Okay. So we looked at this bitrate chart already. Ask me any questions you can about this if you have any. I'm going to move on to the next one as soon as this catches up. Come on. So basically, this is my ending quote. I'm gonna end, and I'm gonna try to end on time. We went through that pretty quickly, but maybe we have some questions. Maybe we don't. I don't know. But basically, I love Michael Jordan, and he says some people want it to happen, some wish it to happen, and some people make it happen. So I highly recommend you make it happen as often as you possibly can. So that's basically my presentation. And does anyone have any questions? I don't even know if anyone's out there.
Oh, I'm here. We're here. We're here. Our internet's starting to act a little bit cranky again, so we're trying to make some adjustments on the fly. We actually haven't had any questions come in yet. So those of you who are tuning in, if you have questions, please get those posted. I did share a link to your Instagram feed so that if people have questions post the event, they can totally reach out to you. And then some people are commenting that they really appreciate your advice and perspective because they hear some different things like immediately jumping into vlog and things like that. So as I mentioned to them, it's great to learn from a variety of people and perspectives so you can know that it's okay to try things and take a slow start if you need to and all that good stuff.
Well, and I think it's worth noting that, Panasonic and even Sony and Canon, all these cameras, they make all of these different color profiles because they're all great for different reasons. There's not like one magic color profile that works for everybody in every situation, and you shouldn't touch any of the other ones.
Right.
Well, and that's why Panasonic wanted me to do this film in Cinelike D2, was to show them that you can shoot something and export it and upload it, and it looks great. So a lot of good color profiles out there,
Right. Well, and that's also like having that variety means that you can really experiment and find your own style and all of that good stuff. And you know, I dabble in video. I'm not a video pro by any means or stretch of the imagination, but I keep doing more and more. And that's enjoyable for me. But honestly, a lot of it is, you know, YouTube and little shorts for Instagram and stuff like that. So you're a true pro with this.
Find a color profile that you like, and you could tweak it. I have a good friend in Tennessee that has a wedding film company, and he takes the natural color profile and he just like dials it in a little bit here, a little bit there, and he's made his own preset basically.
Exactly. Right. Well, that's the thing too.
That's
right.
Great way to go.
So, do you have more in your presentation, or was that it?
I went through it quickly, and because I wanted to basically stay on time for you guys. So, I mean, without, you know, kind of knowing who's out there and what more specific things people want, I think I got the meat of it out there for everybody. Yeah, I mean, you know, all those slides you saw, stills of my of the film that we just made. I mean, basically, the things I would say would be go see Mark Toll at Glazer Camera.
He's here this weekend.
Go try the GH5 Mark II.
Yes. And Mark has a demo unit of the new GH5 Mark II. He'll be at the store for the rest of the day today and in tomorrow. He does have a photo walk in the morning, which is full. So sorry if you didn't get a chance to sign up for that. But come by, see him, check out the new GH5 Mark II and all the deals that are happening in the store this weekend. Again, we have thanks tuning in from coming in from those who are tuning in. So I think what probably makes the most sense, since we don't have a lot of questions coming in, is we'll probably go ahead and wrap this session up. I want to thank you so much, first of all, for your patience as we were dealing with these technical issues today. And of course, your time and knowledge. It is invaluable, and we appreciate it, and our audience appreciates it without a doubt. I'd also like to thank everybody at Panasonic who helped make this event happen today. And we're just so grateful to get to partner up with individuals like you for these kinds of presentations.
That's awesome. Hey, in like a chat or anything like that?
Yeah, if you want to send it to me, I'll put it in the copy on the YouTube feed of this session so people can go check that out.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll send that to you right now. And
awesome.
Yeah, then people can kind of see what that Cinelike D2 with that H.265 upload looks like.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself.
All right.
All right. Okay, so can we do a super quick Davinci Resolve question before we sign off?
Absolutely.
What is the difference between the free and the pro version? Would a beginner be okay starting out with the free version and then upgrading if they felt like they needed to?
Absolutely. What is great about Davinci Resolve, which everybody always says, is that Davinci Resolve is free.
Yeah.
And you should absolutely start there, because why buy something until you actually know what you need? Does that make sense?
Yes, so absolutely.
When you work in Davinci Resolve and you start working on it for free, you'll understand, oh man, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that. That's when you start to understand, oh, can Davinci Resolve, the pay version, accomplish that? Or do I need to go to Final Cut? Or do I need to go to Premiere?
Right.
And until you understand what you need, you should only use that free one. That's great.
Right. Well, and I've actually personally been thinking about dabbling with that. I don't own Premiere or Final Cut. I actually edit videos on my iPad with a little app called LumaFusion, but I feel like Davinci Resolve would be like that next step if I want to do more, because it is a bit more robust. But yeah, so that's one I've been thinking about trying for sure. So.
Yeah, and I'm actually not super familiar with Davinci Resolve. I would say just what I know of Final Cut is that you do get lots of preset titles and filters and sound effects.
Yeah.
So you basically do a lot of stuff in that program, and it's $299, and you get it updated for free all the time. So
right.
that's
Yeah.
something to know.
All right. Well, okay, Matthew, we're going to wrap this up and I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I know you've had a busy day so far, so thank you for spending a little time with us again. It's great to see you, and I hope everything is going well for you down there in California and wherever you find yourself as you travel. So everyone who's tuning in, thank you for your patience today as we've navigated our technical issues. We really appreciate it. It means so much to us to have these online sessions and to have people from so many different places joining us. So Matthew, Peter, and Mark, everyone at Panasonic, thank you so much for having us or participating here. And stay tuned. We have another session this afternoon. We're going to do a little testing before we go live on that one and hopefully knock out our technical issues for good. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you back online in a little while.
Thanks so much, Kate. See you soon.
Yeah.